accessible to everybody after this class. I'm going to share my screen now for us to walk through the last bits of this session. And then we'll spend the last, say, 45 minutes basically just answering all the questions that anybody may have. Because I want to make sure that even if you have to take me back to the first class, even if you want to talk about what's product design, even if you want to say, oh, what's qualitative interview, I really don't know. I've just been here. Please feel free to ask me those questions at the end. I will answer them. Okay. So we're going to talk a bit more about information architecture and user flows. Please let me know once you can see my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Can you see
Okay,
my
it's up.
screen now?
Yeah, it's up now.
Okay, great. So I want to just take us back from the beginning to kind of remember what we talked about. We talked about product UI UX design. We talked about what product design is. We talked about the role and what it includes, research and discovery, ideation and design, testing and validation, and collaboration. Just to talk a bit more on this, research and discovery includes everything that we've done so far: conducting user interviews, analyzing user behavior, identifying pain points, competitive analysis. Then we've moved into ideation and design. We've talked about brainstorming. We've talked about creating wireframes, which we're going to talk a bit more in detail today. And then designing interfaces and building prototypes will be the next 2 weeks of your class. And then after that, we'll do testing and validation, which includes usability, gathering feedback, iterating, measuring success. And one more that's quite important is collaboration. We collaborate with engineers, stakeholders. Stakeholders are usually the people that have a stake in that product. The majority of the time is like the CEO or the founder or the project manager, the product manager, or the owner of the business. Those are stakeholders. You also work with product managers, and you will most likely, majority of the time, presenting to leadership. We talked about why product design matters. We talked about design thinking and the overview of design thinking, introducing different design frameworks. We also talked about the double diamond compass, which is what we've been using, which means discover, define in the first diamond, and then develop and deliver in the second diamond. That's what the double diamond stands for. Discover is basically 4 Ds: discover, define, develop, and deliver. So we've been talking a lot about discover, which is all our research. We've now moved into define, which is basically spotting patterns and framing the problem. Now, I talked about why research is important. We talked about the different types of research. We talked about user interviews, surveys, desk research. We also talked about how to go about your interviews. We talked about how to ask questions, what kind of questions are good questions. And then we talked about the different types of desk research. We move forward to talk about the different ways, the different design philosophies that we have. We talked about user-centered design. We talked about human-centered design. We talked about design thinking, lean UX and agile design. And we talked about design systems. And then we made sure that for this class, we're going to use user-centered design as our compass, as the framework, which is user research. We talked about how to do user research planning for interviews. I gave you example of questions. I gave you tips and how to create your research templates to make sure that you're talking to the right people. Many people did their research and interviews. And then we move forward to doing surveys. People created surveys on Google Form and sent it out to be able to gather quantitative data. Then we moved forward to also talking about competitive analysis. And then we went into the second phase, which is define, after doing the first phase. Now, define included pattern recognition, which is what Ethido and John showed us today, where from the interviews that they carried out, they've been able to create clusters, create groups, and see patterns that exist in the data that they collected from people. And basically, we said the process was to capture the data, group them together, create clusters, label them, name them, and then also prioritize and be like, okay, this is my priority to solve now. I'm going to work on this next. This is going to become this feature, which Etido did very well. Moving forward, we have that our affinity mapping, a step-by-step process. We talked about how to create your affinity map, how to group things together, create those clusters, and then from those clusters, see behavioral patterns, and then be able to then map out features from mapping those clusters and patterns together. Now, moving forward, we talked about empathy mapping, and I want to also talk a bit more about empathy mapping. Empathy mapping is basically capturing what the user says, thinks, does, and feels, and then turning it into a visual representation that basically use to you can use to create thought processes on how your users want their goals to be reached and how they want their frustrations to be solved. Now, you remember from the beginning, we've been using this Carry app as a case study, and basically, these are the things that someone that needs the Carry app, let's say Adana, one of my of the clusters I created, would say this, would think this, would feel this, would do this. It's basically trying to think and put yourself in their shoes to say, okay, what does this person actually say? What do they think? What do they do? What do they feel? Based off the research that I've done, based on the data that I've collected, based on the different people that I've spoken to. Empathy mapping is just trying to be in your user's shoes to empathize with them. And that way you're able to come up with, features that would actually be useful for them. Now, we also moved into creating user personas, just the way John and Etudo have created theirs. They've created user personas uh, that represent certain groups of people, and those user personas basically would now guide how they would create the features they want to create, how they will design it, making sure that they have the goals and motivations of their users in mind and the pain points and frustrations in mind. Basically, this is where everybody has actually really excelled in, or should I say everybody, or most people that showed what they did. You guys did really well with the personas. You guys gave life to them. You gave them a bio, you gave them a story, which is very important in empathizing with your user. Now, we're going to talk about journey mapping. I showed us an example of a user journey map in our last class, and I briefly explained it. And I want to talk deeply into what a user journey map is more today for us, just to reiterate and make sure that we understand it. Now, a journey map visualizes how a user will experience the product or service over time, first from awareness and then to outcome. So I want to just give you a brief breakdown on how to approach creating journey maps. You need to first of all think about the different stages. What are the different stages that will occur from when this user finds out about this application until when they achieve their goal? So remember what I just said, until when they achieve their goal. Any user that is coming to use an app, anybody that is downloading an application, they have a goal that they want to achieve in mind. They have the reason why they are coming there. If you looked at John's persona, the first person you wanted to use it for entertainment. Second person had the goal of using it to grow their personal brand. And the third person had the goal of finding news. Those are three different users on the same app. They have three different goals. It's the exact same way on the Carry Savings app. We can have multiple different users and they would have different stages that they will go through to achieve that goal. So you need to remember that there is a goal that each of my user personas or each of my users want to reach. And then from there, I can now draw the user journey map for each of those people. For example, somebody that is trying to use an application for growing their business, basically to put themselves out there, would probably have heard about X when he has done research online to say what applications can I and where I'll be able to get clients as a freelancer. Now, that is basically the awareness. That is how that person will now hear about X. Now, the student that just used it for entertainment probably most likely did not go and do research on that. How the person found out about the application was probably their friend sent them a link about a trending story or gist that happened in school that somebody talked about on Twitter. And then from that link is when the person now saw the application and then downloaded our X to use it for entertainment. So I just wanted to show you how different user personas can have different user journeys when trying to use an application, both from awareness down to outcome. So, I want us to take a look at the types of journey maps that we have. We have a current state journey map. It's basically to map the existing experience. How we help with is mapping out the existing experience of an application, especially with what we're talking about. We're talking about improving an app that already exists. It is very important to map out the current experience, because mapping out the current experience will help you identify problems and places where you can solve for. Then you can also map out future experience, future states. This is basically trying to envision the ideal experience that your user should have after you have designed that app. That is the user journey future state. And then day in life is basically just showing the broader view of a user's entire day, not just interaction with your products, but how your products fit into their entire life. Now, majority of the journey maps you create would sit between current state and future state, because that's majorly all the kind of products that you'll be working with. The last one showing how people's products fit into the broader experience, the broader day in the life experience of how that product fits into their life, is most likely will be used on products that, large scale products, for example, products that people use. So blind people, for example, might have an application that they use to read out things, read labels. They might have a walking stick that has sensory movements and voice animation. No, those are bigger products where you actually have to say, okay, how does this product fit into this user's daily life? Because this user depends on this product to actually live their life. So I don't want to confuse you too much with that level of thinking for user animals. But think about these two things. How do users currently use this application? Or how do users currently live their life, with this problem I'm trying to solve? And then you now envision of what is the ideal experience I want my user to have when they use my product. And those are the types of journey maps. Pro tips for you: make sure that you map one journey per persona. That's exactly why I explained the difference between the students that are looking for entertainment and the freelancer that is looking to grow his personal brand on social media. So the reason is because different personas have different journeys on the same product. So make sure that whenever you're creating your user journey map, it is per persona. And that's what I want to show you here. If you take a look at this, this is a user journey map for Mrs. Fejiro Ome, which was my number one persona. This user journey map is not the exact same thing that will happen for Mr. Joshua. Do you understand? So I wanted to point that out so that you know that when you're creating user journey maps, you need to consider all the personas that you have created. Okay. Moving forward, we have an example of a user journey map here, just to kind of give you the backdrop on how would how would you move forward to creating your own user journey map. Now, stage one for me is discovery. Discovery is, how does my users find out about the product? Action, please add on Instagram. I need to now map out the next thing. It's 4 things I need to map out: action, thought, emotion, and pain points. The person might see an ad on Instagram, and then when they see it, they probably think, oh, another savings app, I've tried one before. What is their emotion at this point with that thought? They are probably skeptical about it. And what is the pain points? The pain point from this is that they've had past experiences with failed budgeting, using other apps that didn't really give them, solve the problem that they want. So at this point, my user is skeptical about the application. Now, let's say during sign up, the user actually moves on to sign up. When they download the app and they look at it, they say, okay, this looks simple enough. They are cautiously optimistic. What can I do here to make sure that my user feels comfortable and wants to move forward with the app? Make onboarding feel personal, make onboarding feel simple. If I do that at this point, my user will move forward to the next thing I want them to complete, which is for them to first save. So your stages are basically the things you want your user to complete. They always start with awareness or discovery, and it ends with outcome and or goal. So in the middle of that are the things you want them to do. Okay, when they discover your app, what do you want them to do? You want them to sign up. After you want them to sign up, what do you want them to do? You want them to verify their account, or you want them to um, upload, add money to their account, or you want them to book their first ride. Do you understand? So those are the stages, and under it, you need to look for action, thoughts, emotion, and pain points for each of those stages that your user will be feeling. And the pain point is always where you will see an opportunity, basically, to make that process better for your user. So this is what to consider when creating your journey maps. Moving forward, we have the problem statements and POV. I talked a lot about this in the last class on how you can create your problem statements, which is basically who your user is, what they need, and why they need it. Who, what, why. Who you're solving for, what they need, and why it matters. That's how you create your problem statement. And your problem statement is basically for you to say, okay, so I did this research, I wrote this personas, I tried to empathize with my user, I came up with empathy maps, and I discovered that of a reliable, simple savings platform, because that is why, because they find it difficult to save due to responsibilities from their family members. Do you understand? So that's how to frame your problem statement, saying in retrospect, after I have done the discovery and I've done the define, this is now what I have found out, and this is solve. Okay, so now this is phase three of the double diamond, which is develop. Um, I want us to talk about information architecture and user flows. We talked about information architecture in the last class at the end, and I just want to talk about it a bit more to give you step-by-step processes when working on your information architecture. Now, before you wireframe, before you design, before you open Figma to actually do screen design and typography, cards, input fields and forms, hero section, and future list, etc. Before you do all of that, you need to know how your user would use the app. You need to come up with like, okay, so when they download the app, they'll click the first button. The first button will be the onboarding button. When they click the onboarding button, they'll move forward to fill in a form. That form, I want to collect their email, their phone number. That is, so you have to come up with the full structure. You have to have it mapped out, either on pen or paper or on FigJam, as I showed you the last time. That's what will help you to now know, okay, these are the elements that I'm going to need on each screen. The home screen should have a card that tells them how much money they have in their accounts. The home screen should also have a button where they can add money to their accounts. The home screen should also show the user that, okay, these are the past transactions that you've carried out. Now, all of these things, you're not going to just go to Figma and just start designing. You have to map it out. You have to make sure that it makes sense and that every element that is needed in that screen has been thought about before you actually start designing. And that's what your information architecture and user flow is for. It's to help you do that draft breakdown of how that application will be structured before you now start designing it. It's basically understanding how content is organized and how users will now move through the application. That's what information architecture is, and then your user flows. Now, some corporate tools for creating an information architecture. Make sure that you group related contents together so that users can predict where to look. Categories, tags, hierarchy. If I was going to show users their balance, I will group the label of your balance, the amount that's in the account, related. So users can easily predict, okay, if I'm looking for my balance, I look at that card. Labeling, you have to actually use what your users will say. Don't use internal jargon. If I start putting things like information architecture and empathy mapping into my application, users don't understand that. But if I want to talk about information architecture, I can say something like, oh, the structure of your content. That is using, third grade language, not using internal jargon. It is AUM and rules and regulations in your application. You need to make it something simple that everyday people that actually use the app can understand. So that's basically just giving you a tip on labeling. Navigation, how do users move between sections? You think about that. Is it from the top? What does the nav bar? Nav bar is navigation bar. What does it look like? Okay, I've never created a mobile app before. Let me go and look at other mobile apps. How do people navigate? Oh, I noticed that on majority of these apps on Android, they have the navigation bar at the bottom where they have icons, home. Okay, so that's how people expect mobile apps to be on Android. Okay, let me do some research. How do people expect mobile apps to look on iOS? You look into it. Okay, there's usually like a top bar, there's a side panel. You do research into those things. Majority of these things will be taught to you when you start designing. You'll be taught about input fields. You'll be taught about navigation, about cards and forms. You'll be taught about toggles. These are different elements that are used in UI design. But before you move into designing that, you need to kind of understand, okay, what does the navigation look like? What does the hierarchy look like? And that's how you come up with those those things. Sorry, guys, just give me 1 second before I move on. Okay. Sorry, moving on. Um, another model I always use to help me when I'm trying to understand how would users want this application to be organized. You can ask users to group content cards the way they expect to find them. Uh, Majority of this you also find out when you're doing testing with your prototype models. You'll be able to see where users go to find things, and that's how you know. Okay, maybe I should remove this from. And these are just like some tips and tools that you can use when working on products, especially when you're working with big teams, like in big companies. These are some of the things that they use to be able to come up with the information architecture of their products. Now, user flow, the exact path a user takes to complete a task. Every screen, every decision, and every branch. Basically, you consider every single thing that will happen. There's something called edge cases. It's not on my presentation, but you learn about it more in the next session. Edge cases are things that happen out of the normal experience that you create for a user. So, for example, let me explain what an edge case is. If you download an application, right? And you sign up. Normal flow is download the app, you sign up, you get into your home screen. So normally a product designer will design screens for all of those things. But we're going to consider, okay, what do I show if the user um, enters a wrong email? What is an edge case? What do I show if the user is not connected to data? What screen comes up? What's the design of that screen like? You need to think, okay, if the user has logged in and then they click their notification. What does it look like when they don't have any notifications? You need to design that screen. You have to think, okay, what does it look like when they have a notification? What does it look like when all the notifications are red? What does it look like when all the notifications are on red? So this is what user flows you have to come up with. When you work on user flows, you create the flow of every task a user would create, and basically the different outcomes that can happen, especially the edge cases. That's what user flows are. So we have different flow diagrams. We have the start, which is the circle. We have the rectangle, which is a step. We have the decision point, which is a rectangle, and then we have the flow direction. Sorry, decision point is a diamond, and then the flow direction. This flow chart is basically like flow chart. What they taught us, I think most of us, they taught us flow charts in ICT in secondary school. That is exactly what you're doing here. You're creating a flow chart, a user flow that shows the process of how a user carries out a step from one place to another. Now, let's go to what a user flow actually looks like in real time. This is an example of a user flow. It shows the process and decision from onboarding to sign up. You remember the circle for start, you remember the diamond for decision, and you remember the triangle for step. Now, when a user downloads an app, this is a step. They click on sign up. Once they click on sign up, this rectangle is used to show that this is what happens on the system end. So they are prompted to enter an email account to create a password. This is what the system does. This is not the user action. This is a user action. This is not a user action. Confirm their email by verification link sent email. This is what happens. We're telling users to confirm their email by the verification link we sent to their email. Now, what happens in the background is that we check. You need to always remember this. Once user downloads app, click sign up, and then we send them an email and they click the email. We need to be sure, does that account exist? There are two answers to that. Your decision icon, which is your diamond, always has two answers. It's yes and no. If yes, what happens? If no, what happens? This is how you create a user flow diagram. This might be a little high level complex for you, but sometimes you don't even have to do it in the diagram first. You can write it down in paper. Majority of the time, I will create a text box and I will just write So let me use let's use bolts as an example. So let's say the user has the starting point for bolts now, I will say is the user opens the app. Their goal is to book a ride and get the best price. After user opens the app, they log in by entering their email and password. In bracket, I will say, does the email exist? These are edge cases, these are decision questions. Is the password correct? If email and password is correct, user enters the dashboard. If email or password is wrong, we prompt user to enter correct email or password. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is so that you can know that before you get confused with all these diagrams that you're seeing here, you can block this out of your mind and actually write the flow of the application and how it will be used in real time. Then you can now take this and now translate it into a user flow diagram and start with the user opens the app. Okay, I'll put that in a circle. That is the user opens app. The next thing is their goal is to book a ride and to get the best price. Okay, we know that. After the user opens the app, what happens? They log in by entering their email and password. So we put in the next thing. User enters email and password. After that, we check, does the email exist? The next thing I know is that that's a question mark by the side. It means I'm going to use a diamond. Email exists. I have yes or no. If email exists, that's yes. User enters dashboard. If email or password is wrong, that's no. We show user error message to put in the correct email or password. That's how you now create your user flow step by step, step by step. Now, this is one example, which is quite easy because you can think about it. I want to give you another example that's a bit more complex. I want to take you into one of the products that I designed recently and show you a bit more complex user flow. Just give me a moment. Now, this is a user flow for just 2 features of a massive application that I've been designing. I designed user flow for each feature. So you can take a look at this. You see this is messaging flow for a patient. This is the messaging flow for therapists. This is journal for patients. This is journal for therapists. So in one app, you can have multiple user flows just to know how a particular feature will be used. Let's look at the smallest one here and just take a deep dive into it so that you can understand me a bit more. Okay, let's look at the journal for therapists. Now, therapist opens app. That is the starting point. And 2 things can happen. Therapist either navigates to patient chats or therapy receives a patient shared journal entry notification. Those are the 2 things that can happen that will take this user into journal therapies. If the therapist navigates to a patient's chat, he sees the patient's journal that the patient has shared with them. I know that this might be a bit too complex for you because you have no background on this application, but I'm just trying to show you the flow. You see that we have the same diamond shape here, diamond for decision. We have the same square here for the things that happens, like the feedback that the system gives the user. And then we have the normal rectangle shown in gray color that shows user action, user step, the step that the user takes. So all in all, you see I use 4 diagrams here, the exact same way I use 4 diagrams here. Even if these are 2 different products, this is showing the full user flow for an application, that's showing the user flow for just one feature, but it's the same principle I'm trying to teach you. We're trying to show the step-by-step process that a user takes from the beginning of opening the application to the end of the goal that they're trying to complete. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pause. Anybody have any questions before we move on? I just don't want to, because I know it's going to be a long class. I don't want to just be talking, and then people are not following me. So please, if you have any questions, if you want me to reiterate on anything, please just raise up your hand. Okay, Etido, please go ahead. Yes, go ahead. You can ask me, Etido.
My question is the information architecture. While drafting it, are we to input the already existing features and then put in our own features that we want to add or improve? Or while doing the information architecture, are you just to put the new features you are trying to put in place?
Now, for this redesign that we're doing, you can do information architecture for the new features they are trying to put in place, and that will be fine for it. But if we're designing a new app, an application, the information architecture can be done for just that feature you're trying to introduce. So you need to show, okay, how do people access that feature? What is the breakdown of that feature? What is underneath that feature? And how do people reach their goals when using that feature? That's basically what your information architecture should show for this one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, John, please go ahead.
Okay, my question is when you were talking about how to do information architecture on FigJam the other day,
Yeah.
it was the explanation was pretty clear, and it was so your explanation on user flow and the information architecture, they are kind of similar. So I trying to know, is there any difference? Like, what's the major difference between the both of them?
Amazing. That's a very good question. Okay, let me quickly show you the major difference because I have 2 of them side by side here. Let me put them closer. Okay, so if you take a look at this here, information architecture is like showing you the content of an app. It's just telling you that in this app, there's onboarding, homepage, recipe page, meal planning page, etc. And then under each of this page, this is content that will be inside it. User flow is showing the step-by-step process that a user is going to take to reach their goal. So basically, this person is trying to create an account on the application. What would they do? They will open the app. Once they open the app, they will click sign up. When they click sign up, they will enter their email and password. After that, we will now send them a confirmation link. Now, this user flow is not only going to be used by you. Developers too will ask for this. Before I ever give a developer any design, I always give them the user flow first, because it can even help them to start working on the back end of the application. The back end is basically the code they will write to make sure that, okay, when a user enters email, they check the code, is the email correct? This user flow can guide that. So that's the major difference between the two of them. Just to give you a deeper view into that product that I showed you guys. This is like a very detailed user flow for each feature on the application, because we gave this to the developers before we even started designing. And it shows what happens. Patient opens the app, they navigate to the journal tab. Once they navigate to the journal tab, is there any existing entry or folder? If yes, this is what happens. If no, this is what happens. That way, it shows the step-by-step thing that happens when a user carries out an action. But your information architecture has nothing to do with the users carrying out an action. That's just you having a breakdown of, oh, this is how I want the app to look. Oh, this is where I want, under onboarding, I want it to have this screen, this form, navigation bar. I want it to have notifications. I want it to have a grocery list, etc. So that's the major difference between information architecture. Information architecture shows the structure of the page. It shows how the contents will be in each page. And then the user flow diagram shows how the users will actually use the application to reach their goals. Do you understand that?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so we'll move on. I think everybody's following. Moving forward, we've talked about user flows. Now I want to talk a bit about sitemap creation. So a sitemap is like a bird's eye view of every page and section in your product, arranged in hierarchy. It's the blueprint that aligns your team before any wireframe. Basically, it shows the top down from the beginning of the application to the bottom, the sitemap. And this is mostly used a lot for like websites, to show how each website, each web page is created, what is under each web page, and it's also used for like documentation of products. This is also very, very, very similar to information architecture. So whenever I do information architecture, I will not do a sitemap. If I do a sitemap, I won't do information architecture, because they are very similar. It shows you how each page is aligned and where each page is under. The reason why I do information architecture a bit more is because information architecture is a bit more detailed than sitemap. Sitemap just shows you pages. Information architecture can show you each content. So for example, if you look at this sitemap, it says we have the home, you have goals, transaction, and profile. Under it is at each page that you have active goals, create new goal, history page, milestone page. These are just like basically pages that you will see. But if you take a look at information architecture that I have here, it's a bit more detailed. It shows that, okay, under onboarding, I'm going to have splash screen sign up form. Under home page, I'm going to have profile information, medical condition, personalized recommendations. I'm going to have a navigation bar. But even inside my navigation bar, I broke it down into more detail. My navigation bar, this was going to be there. On my notifications, this was going to be there. Normally on a sitemap, I can just put navigation bar notifications without breaking it down into more detail. So I always recommend doing an information architecture, which once you've done, you don't really need to do a sitemap. So just in case you're asking the future, what's a sitemap? Basically, it's just like a bird's eye view of every page and section in your products that you're designing. Okay, now we're going to move to low fidelity wireframes and UX best practices for low fidelity wireframes. Now, before you do your low fidelity wireframes, you can do your crazy eights. Sorry that the crazy eights is before the low fidelity wireframes. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be once you've done your site map, your information architecture, the next thing you then do is your crazy eight. Sorry for the mixing pages. So I talked about the crazy eight before. How it works: you fold a sheet of paper into 8 panels, or you draw line on A4 and divide it into 8. You set a timer for 8 minutes. You spend 1 minute on each panel, forcing your head to push past the first idea, coming up with different ways a particular page can look like. Now, we've done our information architecture, right? We know that, okay, we're going to have our home and dashboard. Now, we know that under home and dashboard, we're going to do balance, progression, quick save button, resale activity. But we really don't know how we're going to organize any of this. That's where your crazy eights help you. So in your crazy eights, you now move forward to saying, okay, on my home screen, I'm going to come up with 8 different ways that home screen is going to look like. I know that there are certain things that need to be there. Number one, my home card, a button, a tab that shows that has an image and text under it to explain it. You know the elements that need to be in that screen. Now, what you need to do is come up with 8 different ways that screen will look like, and that's where your crazy eights come up. I would have really loved to see you guys do crazy eights, but you first need to have done your user flows and information architecture, and that won't happen today or between today and Monday. So but I'll still be on the group. I'll still see what you guys submit. So whenever you get to the point of doing a crazy eight, you can still send it to me privately. I'll look at it, I'll give feedback. But it's a very, very good way to come up with ideas on how your screens will look like. And you can do this for every screen. It will help you come up with different ideas. Then you can now look at it and say, okay, which one is the best? Which one solves the goal for my user? If my user wants to come here and make a tweet, which one would be the first thing that they will see, and they'll easily know where to make the tweet from? If I was going to do that, I'll either choose this one or this one, because I can easily see those 2 buttons there. It's the first thing I see if I was going to make a tweet. So I will now take this one and say, I'm now move forward to do A and B testing. I can now do the design it, low fidelity, and say, okay, between A and B, ask a few people, which of these screens helps you to easily create a tweet? That's how you now come up with the final way of how that screen will look like. That's how crazy it's help. It's a very, very good brainstorming technique. The goal is to generate 8 different ones that you come up with one. And then some other brainstorming techniques that we talked about before is brainstorming, basically coming up with different ideas. You can even ask AI to help you come up with 50 ideas, and then you look through each of those ideas, try to see which one actually solves the problem. And then we also talked about the how might we. But I really want you guys to always do that crazy eight, because it's a really good activity to help you be creative, to help you come up with different ways that a screen can look like. And when you can come up with different ways that one screen can look like, you'll be a really, really great designer, because you're never limited to a particular layout or a particular structure for designs. Okay. Does anybody have any question about this crazy eights? Anybody? Okay, yes, please go ahead.
For the crazy eight, are you the one just designing it for yourself, or you're the one are you the one thinking about it, or your user will tell you that, okay, this is how I want it to be, or you're the one that's just doing it for them?
You're the one coming up with it, because you're the designer. You're the one. You have already asked user a question. All the place of us asking user a question has kind of paused for now when we're ideating. Users are not the one that will ideate for us. We're the ones that ideate. Then we're the ones that will come up with 8 different ways a screen can look like, and then say, okay, this screen has a couple goals. Your screen should always have a goal. The home screen, for example, the home screen of what should I do? Let's use boats. The home screen of boats has a couple goals. You're supposed to be able to navigate to all other screens from there. That's goal 1. Goal 2, you're supposed to be able to book a ride from there. That's goal 2. Goal 3, you're supposed to be able to see the input field for you to enter see the best price, see the input field, how you're supposed to enter your location. So those are the things that you're not supposed to be in that screen. And then you now come up with 8 different ways that screen can look like, with all those elements that will meet all those goals. Do you understand?
Oh, I understand now.
Yes. So that's it. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, we'll move on. Now, I want to talk a bit about low fidelity wireframes and some UX best practices just quickly. Low fidelity wireframes are basically structure without style. So, for example, everything that you do in your Crazy Eight is also a low fidelity wireframe. You can do low fidelity wireframe by sketching on hand-drawn boxes, basically with pen and paper. Crazy Eight is a pattern of low fidelity wireframe. You can do mid-5. Basically, that's no color, just gray text. Anything that you're doing is gray, black, and white. Gray, black, and white. It's basically to just test ideas quickly. So this is an example of a low fidelity wireframe. Now, if you look at this, I want us to look at this together. We know that, okay, something will be here, like a bar will be here. We know that this circle might be like a profile picture. This might be like text. We know that, okay, this is a card. Inside this card, there's an image here because this is going to like represent an image. This is probably going to be some text. This is probably going to be some text. We know that there will be something here. We know that there's a button, 1, 2, 4 buttons below. This is low fidelity wireframe. You're not putting any text, you're not putting any image. You're just putting placeholders to show how the layout, the structure, the look and feel of that page will be before you now move forward to actually designing it. So let me show you, what a low fidelity. See this, if you look at my Crazy Eight, you see that when I put things, I use like line, this wriggly line to show text and squares to show boxes of where things will be. I use this X with that circle in the middle to show where an image will be. So wherever you see that X, you know that, okay, an image will sit here. This is a low fidelity wireframe on pen and paper. Let me show you a low fidelity wireframe done on Figma. This is a low fidelity wireframe done on Figma. There's no text, no buttons, just placeholders to show that, okay, something will be here, something will be here, image will be here, etc. That's how you do a low fidelity wireframe. Same thing as this, low fidelity wireframe. This is mid-5 because now I have some text in it that shows email, phone number, password, but you can still see there's no color. It's basically all gray, black, and white. Now, if you now move forward to see a bit more of low fidelity wireframes, this is me just showing layouts. No text, no image, but I've broken it down. This is a bit still mid-5 because I have some text. Normally, it's just be this line here instead of new plan. And it's just showing different ways that a page can look like by working without, thinking too much about, okay, what image will be here, what text will be here. You see this is just showing layouts, box, image. And you can do this with paper. That's the same thing I did on my paper here that I've just translated into doing it on Figma with boxes and black and white colors. And basically that's what low fidelity wireframe framing is all about. It's converting your ideas on how a screen will look like without thinking too much about color, typography, text. You can use lorem ipsum. Lorem ipsum is dummy text. If you search online and just search for lorem ipsum, you'll be able to come up with dummy text. And that's how low fidelity wireframing works. Okay, going back to our class. There are some UX best practices that you have to put in mind when working on wireframes, working on hierarchy, so working on layouts, working on structure of your pages. Use user scan in F or Z pages. Let me explain what it is. Whenever we read from left to right. If you take a look at F goes from like this here, like this here. Same thing with Z shapes. Users goes like this here, they scan down, they go like this here. So everything we usually do, users always read from left to right. So whenever you're putting things you're trying to design, whether it's a flyer, whether it's an app, anything has to do with design, you need to make sure that if you want users to start from a particular point, you start it from the left before you now move the progression of that thing you want them to either read, see, or consume to the right. You need to think about that. That is called visual hierarchy. There's also something we call the proximity principle. It's called Gestalt principle. It means that proximity groups related items. So things that are close to each other, users will most likely convince themselves that they are related. Do you understand? So for example, if let's say I have a button, if I have a button on a card, right, that says your balance 50,000 naira, and I have a button there that like let's just say a circle button that has the plus icon. a user will most likely think that that button is to add money to their balance. If I now click that button as a user, and that button takes me to add a profile picture to my account, I will be confused. So you always need to make sure that you use this principle of proximity to group related items. If an item is not related to the other, try your best to give them some level of space and hierarchy. Do you understand? Now we have Fitts law. Fitts law is make what is the most important thing on your screen big and close to where users have focus, close to where users can easily touch. Let's go back to this my design here. This my crazy eights. Now, the biggest button in this place, in this whole thing, is this one. And that is a button that will make users make an action. So if I was going to use Fitts law to select a button, a screen that I was going to select from here, I'll most likely select this one because I know that, okay, I want users to add a meal plan to it. So that's the first button I want them to click when they come here. So I need to make it very visible and bold in their faces. So that's the first thing I will click. It's the same thing. If you're working on a fintech application, the first thing you want users to do is add money. So I'll make the button to add money as big as possible on that screen, so that when users see it, that's the first thing they are triggered to see. That's the first thing they are triggered to press. That's what Fitts law is. So I'm just giving you guys this a bit of rule because it will also help you when ideating before you actually go into designing. That's Fitts law. Okay, then we have Hicks law. Hicks law means more options cost to more time to decide. Make sure that you don't give your users that illusion of choice. Make sure that the choices they have are limited. Make sure that they don't have to do too many things to get to a particular point. Like, if I want to add money to my account now and they're asking me, how old are you? When was your mother born? What's your mother's maiden name? What's your father's birth name? Before I get to the point of adding the money, I've already deleted the app because you have already frustrated me. So you need to make sure that you reduce how many decisions or how many touch points your users need to go through to get to their goal. Make sure that it's very easy for them to reach their goals. That's extremely important. So these are just some US best practices I want to leave you guys with today. And then lastly, we have the WCAG standards. It's basically accessibility basics. Contrast ratio, touch targets, labels, color alone. Never use color as the only indicator of status. Make sure you have labels. Make sure that every input field and every icon has a label so that users are not confused. Oh, what does this icon mean? There's a label behind it that says this is what this icon is. Do we know what labels are? Do we know what labels are? Okay, let me show us what labels are. So for example, if you take a look at my design here, I have icons here. These are basically going to be icons. All these small text underneath it are labels. It shows that this icon is a meal plan. If I click here, I'll see my meal plan. This is also a label. It means like everything that is here, any icon, any image here, has something to do with dinner. Anything that's here has something to do with lunch. So these are labels. They're basically text fields that explain, something that's either beneath them, on top of them, or with them in a particular card. And those are what labels are. Okay, so make sure that you have your contrast ratio. I want to introduce us to a platform. I'm going to share it to the chat now. WCAG is used to check contrast. I would show us what contrast is so that in case you're asked outside, oh, what's contrast? And also, you will be able to also check contrast. I've just sent a link to the chat now. It's called Contrast Checker. And you can use that to always check your contrast. But before you check your contrast, let me explain what contrast is. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to do something. If I take this rectangle and I put a text on top of it, and I want to say, click me. This text and this background have good contrast. We call this the background and we call this the foreground. This is perfect contrast. But if I come and then I make this text a different color, can you see the click me? You can barely see it because this is from far, you cannot even see it. It's merged into the background. And it's not only in colors that are similar to each other. Sometimes if you have a really dark background and you put a really dark color too, if I put like, the background is black and I put something like dark blue, like this can never work. You can barely see it. Someone that has eye problem will never know what is on this card. They will never know what that button is for. And normally self text is usually smaller than that. Text is probably like 16 and it's here. And you can't see it. So this has bad contrast. Good contrast will be instead of this dark brown, I will have like a light shade of blue, and my user will be able to easily read that. Click me. So this is what we call contrast, making sure that the background and foreground, you can easily read the text that is on it. You can see what's in the background, you can see what's in the foreground without the contrast colliding. Just because people have eye issues, also, even if people don't have eye issues, sometimes it's really bad. If contrast is really bad, even people with great eyesight will not be able to read or understand what you have designed. So it's very, very important to make sure that you follow the WCAG standards for accessibility. Okay, so now that we've talked about low fidelity wireframing, mid fidelity wireframing, and high fidelity wireframing, I've given you some tips on visual hierarchy. The next thing I'm going to talk about basically is prototyping methods. And prototyping is like something that can be done with your low fidelity. It's something that can be done with mid fidelity, something that can be done with high fidelity. It's something that should be done with your designs when they are ready. And you use prototyping to also test. There are different types of prototypes. I'm not going to go into detail because this will be taught in like week 3 or 4. But they have paper prototypes, you have wireframes, you have clickable prototypes, you have coded MVPs. Coded MVPs have now left Figma and design and gone to development because it's done with like React, HTML, and CSS. Clickable prototypes can be done with Figma, Frame. I'll also include Lovable here. Lovable is an AI platform that you can actually use to create clickable prototypes. Wireframes are like low fidelity wireframes that I showed, and you can make some of those buttons clickable, and people can actually click it to just see how they use your low fidelity wireframes before going forward to designing, seeing, okay, the place I put this button, is it good? Do I need to move it, etc. So these are some prototyping methods that you can have in mind to use. And a key principle is that prototype at your lowest fidelity. It helps you test your assumptions. Like, for example, you can prototype this whole thing. These screens can be prototyped, even if you've not designed it yet. Even if it's still just low fidelity wireframes, you can prototype this to just see how people navigate around the platform. What do they click? What are they confused about? It will help you to know how to get the best and final screens before moving into your design. Okay. I want us to talk about high fidelity wireframes. High fidelity wireframes look and feel closer to the real product. You have, if this was a low fidelity wireframe, this is your high fidelity wireframe. You have text on the buttons. You can input in some colors. You can input in some real copy. You can have action items, imagery. You can have better spacing. You can space it out well. These are the things that high fidelity wireframes have that low fidelity they don't have. You can also have state design. Basically, what happens when they hover? What happens when they click? Does it change from blue to green? Does it go from red to purple? And once you have done your lo-fi, it should be very easy for you to convert that to your hi-fi, which is your high fidelity. So if I have this and here, so this, I knew that, okay, now I'll put logo here. This was circle before, now I can add an image here. I had text here, so I'll put here. This was a button, so now I'll add the button label, etc. It should be easy for you to convert it. You replace placeholders with real content. You replace placeholder images with actual images. And this is how you move from low fidelity to high fidelity. Now, I'm not going to be a liar and tell you that every time you design, you must do low fidelity before you do high fidelity. It gets to a point where you're actually an amazing designer, or you're designing for a company that already has a product. They have a design system. They have colors and stuff that they use. Sometimes you might just skip the gun and move into high fidelity design and prototype high fidelity design and test that. But it is good practice as designers that are just starting out to do your low fidelity because it helps you to test your ideas. You also don't put in too much effort before you can say, okay, does this layout look good? Do I need to move this? Do I need to change that? And I want to give us some components states to design, just introducing you a bit more to design. These are elements that you use in design, and you would have seen it in all the low fidelity and high fidelity that I've created. We have buttons. Buttons are going to be used everywhere in your app because that's how users make decisions. And buttons have states. States are basically, what is the state of this button? Is it pressed? Is it clicked? Am I hovering over it? Is it active? Is it disabled? Is it loading? Those are component states. I want to show you an example. This is a button for me to go next. If I hover over it, you see that the color changes slightly. That's a hover state of the button. If it's just on its own, that's the default state, dark brown. If I hover, it's a bit lighter. There's a bit of, of a touch to it to show that an action has happened. And those are states. You also have form inputs. Form inputs are where people can enter data. You can have empty form input state. It can be filled. When it's error, normally you know that the input field show red, shows you that you have entered something wrong. And you have success, it can show green. So this majority of the things I'm talking about now, you'll be taught more as you go into the next classes, but I just want to start introducing it, introducing it to you. And then we have cards and lists. Cards and lists also have states. If I list an item, there's an empty state for cards, if a card is empty, if a card is selected, it can have a state. The border might go from gray to red or from gray to blue, depending on design systems and stuff. And these are just some Figma developer handoff checklists. This is definitely going to be taught to you at the end of your class with Tech Tribe. But these are just put these things here just to explain a bit more lingo, industry lingo as you move on into the project. We're almost done with today's session. And I want to talk a bit more about visual design, typography, color, and layouts. This will be taught to you in detail once you start designing, but I want to introduce it. Now, you've done a lot of, you've never even entered Figma. You don't already do research. You've done empathy map. You've done persona. You've done information architecture. You've been wondering, when would I finally design? Like, when would I finally do this design thing that I'm seeing everywhere? This is the part of it. This is the last step where you now go into visual design. Visual design is basic. I want to teach you the 3 basic principles of visual design: typography, color, and layout. Typography is text. Color is what the color of everything in your app is. And layout is basically spacing of elements. Spacing of elements. Now, typography is we have different things under typography that help you to differentiate text. We have heading text, we have body text, we have caption text. I'm not going to go into too much detail. We have some font pairing principles. You need to have one display font, which is one heading font and one body font, because the heading font is usually bigger than the body font. We have different types of sizes of fonts to use on mobile applications, on tablet applications, on desktop applications, and how these views are arranged under each other. You will learn that. We also have line heights, we have letter spacing. You can tweak letter spacing, basically the space between each letter, to give your font a different look. So these are a lot of things that you can learn under typography. In fact, you can go and study typography as a course on its own just to understand it. So I'm just introducing typography to you. Then we have color system. Basically, your color system, your color system is a major part of your visual design, because you need to have colors for everything. You need to know what color your cards would be, what are the colors of the buttons, what are the primary colors of the buttons, secondary colors of the buttons, what color does the button turn if there's an error, what color does the button turn if there's a warning. There are things like that. Then we have the 60-30-10 rule. I'm overloading you with information at the moment, but don't worry, as we move on in the class, you'll begin to see how you use all these things under visual design. 30% should be your secondary color. You always have a secondary color. 60% should be neutral, because majority, you don't want your primary color to be the 60%, because it should just be too much. If your primary color is blue and everywhere you are blue, 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 but text is blue, background is blue, I'll be confused. That's why we have the 60-30-10 rule. And then the 10% will be your primary color that draws attention. If you want someone to click something, it will be in your primary color. If the button is important, it will be in your primary color. And then we have grid and spacing, which I usually use, and I always encourage designers to use the 8-point system. Basically, all spacing and sizing should be multiples of 8. So I have 8, 16, 24, 32. And it shows that, okay, maybe between my text heading and my body text, I will have a spacing of 16. And I will use that everywhere. I can now say between 2 cards, I'll have a spacing of 24. And that will be used everywhere in the application. It creates hierarchy, it creates a visual reading that when you now hand off to the developer will know how to make sure that the designs that you created is the exact same thing that he has developed. I hope I have not confused you today. I don't want to confuse you. But this part, don't worry about it. You'll be taught in more detail. Did somebody raise up their hand? Okay, John, say something. Yeah.
Sorry, please. When you were speaking about the color, I was going to ask, like, let's say, for instance, now, the visual here is talking about green success, red error, yellow warning, and then the other one info. And then this place,
Yes.
something like 60, 30, 10. I've heard that thing before, which means the 60 is the
Yes.
neutral background.
Yes.
The secondary, which is 30, support system, and then the primary. So I was going
Yes.
to ask, let's say, for instance, my 60 using the 60-30-10 rule, my 60%, which is my neutral background, is white, and then
Mm-hmm.
my secondary is red, and then the other one is just, let's say, is for my test gray and all of that. So let's say I want to use because this place here says primary access draws the eye to CTAs. So let's say
Yes.
I want let's say my secondary this thing is red and is
Mm-hmm.
dominant. It's more dominant than the other one, and I want to use my CTA. Is it acceptable to use that dominant color?
No, your secondary color can never be. In fact, if your secondary color is red, that's error, because red literally means error. You can see that semantics. Red means error. It's a standard thing where if people see red, it means danger. If you go to your X app now, me, I'm using X in dark mode, so my background is black. But if your X is not in dark mode, it will be white. You will see that the color of X, the primary color of X is blue. And the only thing that is blue on this page is the button to create a tweet. Do you understand?
Okay.
That's because they want to
Yeah.
draw attention to that button. Every other thing is neutral. The background is white, the text is gray and black. Do you understand? That's the 60%. It's the same thing if you go to Instagram, the exact same thing. Instagram's color is that gradient of orange and purple. But if you open the app, majority of what you see is black text and white background, except they want to draw attention to something like the status now. So the status, if you've not viewed it, that's their fine gradient color is used there. They use it to draw attention to things. If you click the plus button and you want to create a post, you will only see that color in specific places. Now, your secondary color has to be something that is not too loud. It cannot be fighting with your primary color, because if you don't have your secondary color and your primary color on the same page, nobody will know what you're trying to draw attention to. But these things are things that you will learn. It's not now, but you will learn it in the coming weeks. So don't bother yourself too much about this. I'm just introducing it to you so that you know that okay, you're moving forward in this class. Okay, so we have the CAP principles. You're welcome, dear. You're welcome. We have the CAP principles: contrast, alignment, repetition, and proximity. I've talked about contrast. I've talked about alignment. Alignment is basically saying that nothing should just be placed jaga jaga. Every element needs to line up with something else. Everything needs to be aligned. That's what your spacing helps you to do. Repetition, repeat visual elements to unify the design. Consistency is equals to trust. Everybody in the world knows that the plus button means that you either want to create something or add something. If you want to do something that has to do with creation or adding, it's very easy for you to use the plus button for that. And then everybody in the world will literally be able to use the application, and that's what that button means. You're not going to use the plus button and mean the plus button means delete. You have confused everybody in the world. So that's repetition of visual elements to unify design. You need to be able to understand that. Proximity, related elements should be grouped together. So I've taught you principles. I've taught you a bit about visual design. I've taught you about low fidelity and high fidelity. I've taught you about the discover and define phase. I really hope that you guys have taken something from these sessions. And now I want to open the ground to questions. Let's use the next 15 to 30 minutes to answer questions. Anybody? So it means I've done very well with my lessons. Okay, Danny, please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much for this second. So my question
You're
is on affinity mapping. So when
Okay.
when I saw John affinity mapping, it's the same thing that I did, but I also did patterns. I think you said you gave it a name. Yes, give it a name.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the first one, then I did the pattern. So I want to be sure if I do something wrong or I am on the right track.
Okay, I want us to just go back a bit. Let's look at my own affinity map. That's why I always come back. This is a project that I did when I was still early in design, so that's why I'm using it to teach. Because this is the level at which you will probably be working on now. And if you're not working at this level, no shaking. Don't be afraid of anything. You get there and you will pass it as long as you keep practicing. So, affinity mapping, affinity diagram. If you take a look at this, you see that there are questions at the top of each of them. These are the questions that I asked in my interview, and these are the answers that I got. Right? So
that means
I've
sorry,
just
that means you
sorry, go on.
I wanted to ask that. That means for you, you asked the questions. For me, I think I asked like 4 questions and I wrote them down.
No,
and I wrote
this
the
is
responses and the
yes, this is question 1, this question 2, question 3, question 4, question 5, question 6. Now, from these 6 questions, yeah, I move forward to finding the pattern. This is still under my affinity mapping. Pattern 3. If you see the pattern 3, it's only 3 things that are there because orange helps me to identify participant 1, this light blue, light orange participant 2, and then this gray participant 4. And I found a pattern between the 3 of them. I noticed that 3 out of 4 of them have a major challenge of not knowing what to eat. That's the pattern. This is my affinity mapping. It's helping me to know, okay, what are the issues? What are the pain points? What are the frustrations that I have found from doing my interview? That's what Etido did, and she did it well. So she was able to look at all the people that she interviewed and come up with clusters of, answers that are similar to help her find patterns. And that's how you come up with your affinity mapping. That's what affinity mapping is all about. It's about taking all your questions, putting the answers under each of them, and then coming up with the patterns that you find from people. Sometimes the pattern might be 3 people, sometimes it might only be from 2 people out of the 10. Sometimes it might be from 5 people if you interview 10 people. And that's how you come up with those patterns. And the top 2 features that participants want is meal planning and finding recipes, because I asked them, what kind of feature would you expect the app to have? And I saw that out of all the 4 of them, majority of them said meal planning and finding recipes. So that means definitely this has given me insights that if I'm designing this application, these 2 features need to be there. So this is what affinity mapping is all about. It's trying to find affinity between the answers that your interviewees gave you. Do you understand that?
Okay, yes, I understand it. Then my second question is on personnel, because while I was in my personnel, honestly, I do not understand behavior there. I don't know how to go about the behavior. That's where I was finding difficult.
Okay, perfect. So I want you to take a look at this. I have someone that is 28 and someone that is 49. Accountant, businessman, Lagos, Akure, medical condition, diabetes, medical condition, high blood pressure. How did I come up with those personas? I actually went back to look at the people that answered my questions. After everybody answered my questions, I had a 22-year-old, 22-year-old, 31-year-old. These 3 people are around the same age. The age not too far. It's like 11 years between the 20 and the 31. And then 22 and 31 is basically like 8-9 years. So I put all of them in one group. And then this person is a 40-year-old man. So I need to create a persona that talks a bit more for people that are 40 and above, 50s, in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s. So that's how I was able to say, okay, I want to create 2 persona. If I had one person here that was 60-year-old, 70-year-old, I'll create another persona. That will make it 3 personas that I can use to represent that person that I talked to that is in a different demography. So first of all, demographic helps me start my persona. Then I look a bit small. This person cooks their own food. This one does not stick to a meal plan. This one also goes grocery shopping. This one has a nutritionist that is a friend. This one is complaining about the cost of living and the economy. So I know that, okay, out of these people, there are people that are affluent, that, it's easy for them to, someone here has a nutritionist, literally. The other person, no nutritionist, cost of living is killing them. How do they manage their health issues with the cost of living being a problem? So now I know I have, okay, from my interviews, there are 2 types of people. There are some people that, have access to nutritionists. There are some people that you find it hard for meal planning. There's some people that I find it hard to even buy food. You understand? So it's helping me to get more insight. If I come in here and say, okay, what challenges do you face? Not knowing what to eat. Portioning and knowing what to eat is also a big problem. The cost of availability of food, most of the time, knowing what to eat. So I've seen 2 patterns here. There are 3 people that have the same problem, knowing what to eat. This one, the problem is money. Do you understand? So I'm beginning to see patterns that are coming up. That's what will now help me to create personas that can represent this different set of people. And this is because I have just 4 people. If I talk to more people now, I could also see maybe 3 other patterns that would have come up that will not help me create other personas that have nothing to do with these 2 personas that I've now created. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how to create user personas.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Welcome. Anybody else? Please ask me questions. This might be the last time that you get me to speak to you like this on a call. Maybe not the last time, but maybe the last time in a while. Ask me questions.
Sorry. Behavior is what the face, right? I just want to be sure it's what the face.
Behavior is how they act. Do you understand? So let's take a look. Behavior is how they act. So if you take a look at this, right, they have goals and frustrations. These 2 things, you would find it from the interview answers, basically. They will tell you what they want to do and they will tell you what's frustrating them. Those 2 things are easy to come up with, right? The bio is basically giving them a story. So this person has she wants access to this. These are her struggles. They've got knowing what finding ingredients, keeping her diet gets boring. So I can create a story about this person and be like, okay, this person is a 28-year-old, 23-year-old accountant, very busy. Knowing what to eat is difficult for her, but she's very, something about her health is important to her. I cannot come here and talk about him and say, oh, this man has high blood pressure, things are hard for him. Sometimes eating the right things is a bit difficult. That's how I create that story around them based off the things I've learned from my interviews. Do you understand? So that's how to come up with their bio. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome. Any other question? No? Yes? Okay, perfect. So I am happy that, there are people here that I'm sure that they got something from this class and this lesson. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys work on a project and adding it to your portfolio, coming up with case studies and talking about all the impacts that Tech Tribe has brought into your lives. I'm really looking forward to you guys making your first, 1 million from UI UX design, making your first $1,000, things like that. So keep at it, don't give up. One thing that is very important in product design is practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. Keep practicing, keep doing. The more you do, the more you practice. Look for knowledge online, ask questions, watch videos. You get better at it. Put your work out there. If you've done something, post it on Instagram, post it on Twitter, tag me to it, I'll repost it. These are the ways that you grow in this place. And I've also shared the link to this slide. You can always go back to it, read it. There's anything on the slide that you see that you don't understand, you can do research on it. And that would always make you a better designer. Thank you, everybody, for being consistent and staying on this. Thank you to John. Thank you to Danny. Thank you to Etido for doing your assignments and being bold enough to come and talk about what you've done. I really appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to what you guys finally do and submit by next month. Okay, over to you, Wilson.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. Thank you so much, Miss Mercy. We appreciate your time and efforts and the value you've poured into in every one of us, including myself. From the breakdown of the foundation to guiding us through research and critical thinking. It's been very impactful and valuable. Thank you so much. We appreciate. So we've officially come to the end of week 2, and is going to be the end of our session with Miss Mercy. That's officially. So she's most likely not going to be taking any classes again. But you can still reach her on WhatsApp if you have any question you'd like to ask her. You can, send a DM to her, or you can send to us and we'll forward to her. So yeah, that's the end of week 2. I really hope you guys have learned at least 18 or 2 from these first few weeks, because next week we're going to I think we're going to be more practical next week in terms of design. Subsequently, we're going to introduce our speaker for next week because he's going to be taking just next week. Then the last week is going to be handled by somebody else before we move into the project phase. So that's that. Just look out for more information on the WhatsApp channel. Thank you guys for everybody that has been consistent from the first week up until now. I hope you guys remain consistent up until the end. We can call it a night here. So yeah, thank you so much and good night, everybody.
What is it?